I'd like to know, why did you pass information to Mr. Tomlinson?
Well, as I stated before, sir, I did not pass anything to Mr. Tomlinson. I never had any contact, either by fax, phone, or meeting with Mr. Tomlinson.
I want to go back just for a minute to the question of the Tomlinson investigation. And you said that you had not had any contact with Mr. Tomlinson, and yet we have people who have told us that the letter that was sent to your office from Congressman Berman and Lantos and Senator Dodd was actually, and a complaint was actually ended up in the hands of Mr. Tomlinson, that it was faxed to his executive director. Did your office have anything to do with faxing that letter and complaint to the executive director of the board?
Yes, well, not executive director of the board, the executive director of the organization.
The organization.
Yes, sir, I did, and the letter, the faxing of the letter was intended. The faxing of the attachment to the letter was inadvertent, and as soon as we learned that, we instructed him to return it to us, and he assured us at that time that it had not been shown to anyone else, and it was only a day or so.
You say it was inadvertent. I mean, it seems like a pretty serious mistake to alert someone or alert an organization that was being investigated that there was a complaint against them.
The facts are pretty clear. I don't dispute the facts in any way. I had a phone conversation with Mr. Conniff, is his name, because of the nature of the information that was required from the congressional letter. I told him that we would need help at his highest level in getting things like timesheets and information and so on. And he said, what do you need it for? And I gave him a general background. I didn't refer to any congressional letter. And he immediately said, oh, you're talking about the double dipping and the 40-hour week, and he knew each of the issues. I was brand new. I had only been in office about 6 weeks, but apparently, and this turned out to be the fact, these same issues had already been the subject of an investigation both by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Office of Government Ethics. So he well knew the issues. So at that point, I said, well, yeah, this is a request on the same issues. And since he knew those issues, I said, I'll just send you the letter and you can see what it is. And I told my assistant, who was a temporary person at the time, fax the letter to Conniff. I don't think anybody disputes that that was the instruction. Fax the letter to Conniff. She was within, I think, her right to interpret that to fax the attachment. It was not my intention that it include the attachment. I was only thinking of the letter. When we learned, I think it was the next day, that the attachment had been faxed, I instructed my legal counsel to call Brian Conniff to ask him to return immediately the attachment, and that was done.
But in fact, Peter Lubeck, who was the person who was investigating this, the chief investigator on this matter, has testified that once that one of the witnesses involved said what happened, and this is quoting Mr. Lubeck, what happened as a result of this, two of the witnesses were observed shredding documents related to this case. When I interviewed the two witnesses, they said, oh, we were just housekeeping. So that apparently that letter had potentially very serious
I think that's a leap of faith, sir. I really do. To say that with all the knowledge and all the media attention that was being given at that time already and had been given to these allegations against Mr. Tomlinson, to say that a shredding party took place because of my discussion with Brian Conniff, who we have no reason not to trust. He was the highest ranking officer in that organization. I can't say one way or the other, but I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that that is what caused it.
Mr. Yarmouth, if you would allow me, I'm confused because when Mr. Shays asked you whether you had any communications with Mr. Tomlinson or others that would get to him, you said no, absolutely not. And now it turns out you directed a fax and it inadvertently had an attachment to it, which you tried to pull back afterwards. Isn't that a communication?
There's a great difference in my mind between the executive director, Mr. Conniff, and Mr. Tomlinson. I answered faithfully the question that I did not provide anything to Mr. Tomlinson. There was no way we could have conducted our investigation without the cooperation of someone at a high level of BBG so we could get the materials we needed, the timesheets, the pay sheets, all of the records. And the person we would go to would be the executive director.
Well, let me tell you this. If you ever investigate me and you send in information to my chief of staff, I'm going to know about it. Don't you think Mr. Tomlinson would have known about it?
No, because the chief of staff is in a different relationship than the executive director and the chairman of the board.
In some offices, they talk to each other.
Sir, with all due respect, I don't know sitting here today who other than Mr. Conniff we would have gone to get information of the type we needed.